Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, Watertown. Thank you very much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Well, it really is my pleasure to be here. I am the new governor of the state of New York. 14 days, 2 weeks. I'm nervous today, though. My youngest, Michaela, looked at me this morning. She was looking at me a little funny. She was turning her head, and I said, "What's wrong?" She said, "I think you're getting more gray hair." I said, "It's only been 2 weeks. How can it be in 2 weeks can I be getting more gray hair?" But it can be. It's truly my pleasure to be here. First, to Mayor Graham. Mayor, thank you very much for having us and hosting us and all the work to get ready for today. Let's give him a big round of applause, Mayor Graham. Lee Bowder from General Brown High School, thank you, and all the students who are here today from General Brown High School. Where are you? Right in the front row. Great, thanks. Let's give them a round of applause. Your great Assemblywoman Addie Russell, thank you very much. Let's give her a round of applause. Senator Ritchie, welcome to state government. It's a pleasure to be working with you. Senator Patty Ritchie. As a personal privilege, I'd like to once again welcome and thank the new members of my administration, Didi Scozafaza and Darrell Albertine, who's going to be a great commissioner, a great Deputy Secretary of State. Thank you very much for being here. This is called a State of the State address. It's one of the official functions of the governor. The President of the United States does the State of the Union address. Once a year, he gives the State of the Union, the Union of States. Mayors will give a State of the City, and the governor gives the State of the State. It's actually a very important role that the governor does. It's one of the traditional historic roles where the governor gets up and says, this is the condition of the state. These are the facts and circumstances that are relevant about the state this year. And it's an address that is supposed to frame the governmental agenda for the year. In many ways, over time, it's become dated. It's now given as a speech in Albany, and I guess the expectation is that everybody's going to stop what they're doing and go to Albany for the day. It's in the middle of the week. It's in the middle of the afternoon. So it tends to only be attended by professionals in the governmental arena. The legislature comes, the Assembly and the Senate, and people who do business with the government in Albany. And we changed the address in Albany. We actually invited members of the public, and we got a very large room that held members of the public. We had over 2,000 people who came to hear the address in Albany. We had thousands more who would have wanted to come, and that frankly excited me because it said that people are concerned and people actually want to know what's happening with their government. But we also want to do something else, which is I want to make the point that I don't expect you to come to Albany to listen to the State of the State address. You have a job, you have a family, you're going to school. Albany is a far way away. I work for you. See, you're my boss. You pay me. You sign my check. I'm here to serve you. So I'm going to come to where you are. And I want to bring the government to you. And I want to end what the senator was mentioning. I want to try to end the alienation and the distance that people feel from state government. This is your government. I am your governor. This is your legislature. I'm here for you. And part of the way I want to say that is by actually taking the State of the State and bringing it all over the state for a way to introduce myself and my administration to the people of the state. So it's truly my pleasure to be here. State of the State address. We titled it New York at a Crossroads because I think nothing says it more clearly than that. We are at a crossroads, and you can feel that there are two very different alternatives, two very different roads for this state to go down. On one hand, if you look at the national economic pressures, the economic recession, you look at the cost of state government, you look at the dysfunction of the state government, the fact that the people have lost trust in government, you can see us going down one path, and it's not a pretty path. At the same time, this state is a state of great assets. This state has a phenomenal legacy. This is a state of tenacity. And this state has, I believe, the strongest, smartest, nicest people in the nation. So when you look at our assets, you really think that we can take this crisis and turn it into a moment of opportunity. So what is the state of the state? First of all, this is a time of crisis. Second, it is a time when we must transform our government, and we use that word transform, to become the progressive capital of the nation once again, because that's what New York State government was all about. And we need to seize this moment of opportunity. I can tell you this. We are at a critical juncture. And one thing is sure in my mind. Whatever we do today, we will be determining of the course of this state for decades to come. We really are at that one of those moments in time. And the reason I wanted the high school students here today, this is less about me and my future, frankly. This state has been very, very good to me. And I hope to be around a while. But this is more about your life and your future and the state that we leave you. That's what these decisions really are all about now. For New York, one thing is clear. It is time to change. Time of crisis in life, in government as in life, you can never solve a problem you refuse to acknowledge. Denial is not a life strategy, period. Not in any manner, shape, or form, and not in government either. We have real problems. What are our problems? We're losing jobs in the state of New York, 800,000 unemployed, 9.9% unemployment in Jefferson County. New York State, the worst business tax climate in the nation, the worst. Our taxes, 66% higher than the national average. The rate of growth in the economy upstate is frighteningly low. Upstate New York is in an economic crisis. It has been for years. Before this economic drop, 2001 to 2006, the economy was growing at about 2.7, average nationwide, upstate New York 1.7. Way below the national average. The costs of our pensions, our public pensions, are exploding. 98, 99, it was $1.3 billion. It's going to 6.2, a 476% increase. And the spending of the state is just out of control. Simple point, we spend too much money in the New York State government, period. And we spend way too much money. Inflation was at a rate of 9.7% from 94 to 2009. 5.4 for Medicaid, 6.2 for education. Double the rate of inflation. You spend too much money. State spending versus income. People were making about 3.8% per year. The state was spending close to 6% per year. You spend too much money. You spend more money than you take in, which is never a good economic formula. Not in your home, not in your business, nowhere. The gap this year between what we spend and what we bring in is $10 billion. That's why I have more gray hair in 2 weeks. It's my job to close the $10 billion. You want to know what's even worse? Next year, $14 billion. The year after, $17 billion. Why? Because we've been spending so much for so many years, and the rate of our spending is wholly disconnected with the revenues that the state is taking in. Well, maybe we spend a lot of money, but we get a lot in return. Maybe we get what we pay for. Actually, it's the exact opposite. We have the #1 spending in the nation for education. We're number 34 in terms of results. We spend more money in terms of Medicaid than any other state in the nation. We're number 21 in terms of results. We spend $1.6 billion in economic development. We're number 50 in terms of results. So we're spending money, and we're not even getting what we pay for, which is the worst of all worlds. At the same time, the government's continuing to grow. The organization of government is continuing to grow. The New York State executive branch, up to 606 agencies. More and more government. Local government, state, local, towns, special districts, sewer district, lighting district, over 10,500 all over the state. 169 governments in Jefferson County, one government for every 700 people. That's why the property taxes are going through the roof, because the property taxes are paying for all these levels of local government. And meanwhile, the special interests are overpowering the interests of the people in our government. How do you know it's bad? Because people are voting with their feet. 2 million New Yorkers have left the state. Over the past decade, 6.8, almost 7% of the people in Jefferson County have left. That's the proof in the pudding. Where does this lead you? We need radical reform. We need a new approach. We need a new perspective. And we need it now. The time for talk is over. We need action. We must transform our government. Right now, it is a government of dysfunction, gridlock, and corruption. It's got to be turned into a government of performance, integrity, and pride. It's time for results, not rhetoric. It's time to actually deliver. And it's not about a budget cutting. Well, cut the budget. This is not about cutting a budget. It's not about trimming a budget. It's about using this moment to fundamentally analyze the basic operation. And why do we do what we do? And how do we do it differently? And what was the goal in the first place? Construction, this would be a tear down. Bring it down to the foundation and build it all over again. It's about reinventing government, reorganizing government, redesigning government, transforming the government for a new New York. Well, if you're going to start to redesign, you should start with principles. What are the principles that are driving the redesign? First, we want a government that pays for performance, just like you do in your life, right? You pay your money, you expect to get a product in return. Well, when you're spending tax dollars, it's the same thing. Tax dollars are your dollars that government is spending on your behalf. Pay for performance. Second, a government that gets results in real time. Third, a government that puts people first, not the lobbyists, not the special interests, but puts the people first. And fourth is an icon for integrity. We're going to start by transforming New York's economy. Why? Because what made New York in the first place? What made us so great? We had a big government. That's not what made us so great. What made us so great was the private sector. Were the jobs, were the businesses. That's what made us great. That's the state seal. You know what's at the heart of the state seal? When you look in the very middle of it, you see the two ships? They're on the Hudson River. Those two boats symbolize commerce. Interstate commerce, coastal commerce for the smaller ship, and international commerce for the larger ship. What they were saying was, this state is about enterprise. It's about commerce. And we have to get back to that and put up a new sign that New York is open for business. We want those jobs here. Now, how do you do economic development? Maybe I stay in Albany with a magic wand and I say, this is what this state needs. Exactly wrong. Why? Because there is no one state for this purpose. For this purpose, there are different regions of the state. The North Country is different than the Capital District region, is different than Western New York, is different than Long Island. And you have to come up with a strategy for each individual region for it to work. I spent 8 years in the federal government with Bill Clinton. I was Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. I did economic development all across the nation. The first rule is you have to come up with a program that is tailored to that locality. And it has to be a bottom-up plan. There is no top-down template. You work with that community, you find the assets, with those business leaders, with those government leaders. Everybody comes to one table. You come up with a strategy for that community, and then you invest in that strategy for that community. And that's what we're going to be doing here. We'll be setting up public-private sector partnerships to spur economic growth. The engine of the partnership is going to be the higher education system. We have a beautiful one with SUNY, and that's where the jobs are coming from. These regional councils will do two things. They'll bring the private sector in, but they'll also coordinate among government. You have the county government, you have the state government, you have local governments. You put them all at one table. For the state government, all the state agencies at one table. It'll be chaired by the lieutenant governor, who is a big man on the totem pole, so they'll listen to the lieutenant governor. And this council coordinates all the government activity with a single point of contact, so we bring more efficiency and more effectiveness back to state government. What these councils will do is first they'll coordinate the millions of dollars that the state now uses for economic development, and those funds will come through the councils, and the councils will also compete for an additional $200 million in economic development funding to fund the plans that they devise. Second, if we're going to transform our economy, we have to get property taxes under control. These are some of the highest property taxes in the nation. 13 of the 16 highest tax counties in the nation are in the state of New York. Westchester and Nassau, downstate, have the highest absolute amount of taxes in dollars. By percentage of home value, it's much higher in upstate New York. And we are taxing people right out of their homes. It has to stop. We need to hold the line on taxes now and not raise taxes, and we have to close this deficit without raising taxes, but down the road we're going to have to reduce the taxes. Because the simple truth here, and if there is one line that I believe in fully, and I want you to remember, New York has no future as the tax capital of the nation. You're not going to keep our young people. People are not going to come to this state to locate. You're not going to attract businesses if you are the highest tax state in the nation. They are mobile, they can leave, they can close their laptop and move, and they will. We have to change this legacy, where if you go to New York, you pay a lot of taxes, and the government is hostile to business. This is going to be a new New York, and we need to reverse that trend, and we need to do it now. We have a $10 billion deficit. They say in Albany all the time, well, don't cut anything, just raise taxes. I don't know who they're talking to, but the New Yorkers I am talking to can't afford to pay any more taxes, and I don't intend to raise them. We have to use this moment to transform state government. Last time state government was reorganized was Governor Al Smith, 1927. Do you believe that? And then listen to this. In 1938, they reformed the state constitution. And they said there'll only be 20 departments in state government. Okay? Only 20 departments. So what happened? Because the constitutional amendment limited the size of government to 20 departments. Because they're very creative in Albany. It said 20 departments. It didn't say anything about councils or advisory panels or working groups or facilities or offices or task forces. So they created hundreds and hundreds of additional government entities. They just didn't call them departments. So now you have a structure in Albany where you have the Department of Health, for example, one department, with 87 attached other entities, government offices, just not called departments. 46 councils, one working group. It is an unmanageable situation. It should have never happened in the first place. It shouldn't have been allowed to continue for decades. You have to really roll up your sleeves and get in there to fix it, but now is the time when we're going to have to do it. I want to bring in the best private sector minds that we have in the state. I want to form a private sector commission that comes in and reorganizes the state government once and for all. We'll then present the plan to the legislature, and we'll ask them to pass the plan up or down, but not to tinker with it. We want operational improvements, metrics, targets. I'm going to ask for the first reorganization plan in 6 months because time matters, and I want to get the best private sector people in the state to come in and help us do it. We need to transform our budget. We need to start with an emergency financial plan. I intend to freeze wages for the state public employees. I want to hold the line on taxes. I want a state spending cap that limits the amount of money the state spends. And I want to close this $10 billion gap, not only without taxes, but also without borrowing money. We also have to transform the budget process. I don't know if you've been paying much attention to how the budget gets done or doesn't get done in Albany. But it is, political theater is calling it something that is actually a compliment, I think. We have to change the process, and we have to change the interaction between the governor and the legislature and get it back to a point where it's productive debate and compromise. Right now, the governor and the legislature are like ships passing in the night. Hold on a second. I think I recognize somebody on those ships. Bring that back for a second. Yeah, now if you take a closer look, you'll see on one of those ships is the head of the Senate. That's Senator Dean Scalos. See, he is monitoring and captaining the Senate ship. On the other ship, that is Assembly Speaker Sheldon Silver, head of the Assembly. And then if you look very carefully on the other ship, yours truly. That great big smile. You notice I have the biggest battleship. You notice that? That's because it's my slideshow. That's why. So we're out there trying to get a budget done, and then you have an air attack by the special interest groups, and they're always shooting at me, trying to sink my battleship. That is what happens now in Albany. And we're going to have to try a different approach. We can't have the partisan fighting. We can't have the delays. We have to make it work. There are 3 flashpoints on the budget. The issue of education monies, Medicaid monies, and the issue of state and local mandates. And I'm going to try a new approach, and we're going to start with the way we do the Medicaid budget. The state of Wisconsin actually came up with an interesting model. What happened in Wisconsin is the governor proposed a budget with a lot of budget cuts in the area of Medicaid, and the industry all complained, the industry that works with the Medicaid program. And what the governor said was, come in, we'll all sit around the table, and rather than arguing in the newspapers and running commercials that make insults about everyone, we'll actually sit at a table and we'll sit there until we work it out, and we'll figure out a better way to do the cuts. And Wisconsin had success with this model. We're going to try the same thing in the state of New York. Because it wasn't about cutting a budget to begin with, right? It was about redesigning the program, the Medicaid program in this case, to make it work better. So I'm putting together a crisis management approach team. I'm bringing in the main players who are involved with Medicaid. They started on January 7th. I want to redesign the Medicaid program in time for April 1, which is the deadline for the budget. They will assume my budget target, because I'm going to have to cut the program. I put all the interested people at the table, and we want the program redesigned in time for this budget, and meeting the new efficiencies of the state. We hired the person from Wisconsin who did it from Wisconsin. His name is Jason Helgerson. He's a very nice fella. He just came. I promised him there would be no Wisconsin jokes for 60 days. And he's already hard at work. And I'm excited about that. We're going to do the same basic thing for mandate relief. Mandate relief are the state mandates imposed on local governments and school districts, where the state tells local governments this is what they have to do. We're putting everyone at the table, not just to talk, but we're going to give them the facts, the real start dates, and I need a new plan and a redesigned plan by April 1. The legislature will be part of it, labor leaders, school boards, and municipalities. This is another topic that's been talked about for years and years, and we've done nothing. Education, we have to do especially well, because education really is one of the top priorities for the state. It's also a shame that we spend so much and we do so little. The way we now fund education is basically what they call a formula grant. School district gets a certain amount of money by formula. It doesn't matter if that school district does a great job, they don't get anything more. If they do a terrible job, they don't get anything less. I believe in incentives and sanctions. The whole private sector economy works on incentives and sanctions. You do a good job, you make more. You do a bad job, you get paid less. Only in government, you get the same amount of money regardless of what you do. And then you take the incentive out of the system. I want to put the incentive back into the system. The federal government actually does this much better than the state government. The federal government did it better than when I was in the federal government 15 years ago. When I ran HUD, I moved away from formula grants. Everything was by competition. Everything was a performance grant, because you want governments actually competing against the other ones. Federal government now runs an education program. New York State was just competing for this education money called Race to the Top money. And we were competing against the other states and got our competitive juices running, and we didn't want to lose, because if New York lost, it would be embarrassing, and there'd be an article in the newspaper that this state beat New York, and everybody would look bad. So we competed, and we won. Competition works. You believe in education, you're spending a lot of money, your results aren't what they should be, use competition. So I want to start the first competition program in the state. You'll get most of your money by formula, but there's going to be a special bonus pool, a competitive pot for school districts to compete. And the school districts that do the best job in increasing performance, student performance, they will get a bonus. The school districts that do the best job in improving management and efficiency and find a way to save money, they'll get a bonus, and they'll get a competitive award. And we'll have a ceremony, and we'll bring them up, and we'll give them a big trophy, and we'll give them a round of applause, and we'll recognize them for being leaders in the industry. I want to do the same thing when it comes to consolidation. We've been talking about those 10,500 governments. I've been running all over the state saying to the mayors, the towns, the trustees, why don't you consolidate with the surrounding governments and see if you can't find an efficiency and economy. Not everyone has to do everything. You can consolidate services. It's hard because, especially if you are the leadership of those two towns, let's say. You have two mayors, two boards, etc. If two towns consolidate, then it's hard because you're going to have fewer of the infrastructure that is in control. We have had some success encouraging consolidation. I want to offer a bonus pool for those local governments and those taxpayers where there is an actual consolidation, where you can win a cash award from the state, and half of that bonus will go to the taxpayers themselves. I'm trying to incentivize taxpayers to get involved and push for consolidation. One thing we have to do is we have to clean up the ethical environment in Albany. I spent 4 years as Attorney General. I did a lot of cases, what they call public corruption cases, public integrity cases, and many of them broke my heart. I believe in government. I believe in public service. I believe in the honor of public service. When I was your age, speaking to these high school students, I sat at a kitchen table listening to my father, who was in public service, and when he talked about public service, you really understood the pride he had and the joy he had and the integrity of public service and how important it was, and that you would have public servants who would violate the public trust is really a tragedy. And Albany, it has happened too much, too often, too frequently. It has to stop. The people of the state of New York are disgusted, frankly, by it. Sometimes there are issues that are black and white. This is a black and white issue. The people have lost trust in their government. The government has lost credibility. We have to pass real ethics reform, and we have to pass it now. I will tell you this, and I'll tell you this in front of your assemblywoman, and I'll tell you this in front of your senator. They don't want to pass it. The legislature doesn't want to pass ethics reform. They don't want to do any more disclosure. I'm not going to stop until they pass it. It was my commitment to the people of the state, and I'm not going to back down. And if they don't pass it, I'm going to remind the people of this state constantly that the legislature hasn't passed it, and I wonder why. Why? What aren't they telling you if they don't want to give you disclosure and pass Clean Up Albany? The Clean Up Albany plan would do a few things. Number one, it would end what's called pay-to-play, where vendors, contractors can give a political contribution and then get special treatment. It would require full disclosure of all outside income by legislators. Why? Because you should know who your legislators work for, right? As a simple, basic starting point. Who pays your legislator? You have a right to know, because whoever pays them, they are working for, quote unquote. And you think they're working for you. Well, are they? And if they don't want to disclose their outside income, I think that's a problem. I work for you. I am proud of that. You have a right to know. You have a right to know who your legislators are working for. I want an independent monitor, independent redistricting, so we don't use politics to draw political lines, and public financing of campaigns. All of this to become the progressive capital of the nation once again. We have to deal with the fiscal realities, which are truly pressing. But we also must continue to achieve social progress in the state of New York. I spent 4 years as Attorney General doing corruption cases on Wall Street, and the big question was, where were the federal regulators? Where was the SEC? How did they allow these Wall Street banks to do what they did? And that's a good question. Where were the federal regulators? I have a second question. Where were the Albany regulators? Where was the insurance department and the banking department and the state consumer protection department? What has happened is those agencies, those state agencies, no longer reflect what really happens on Wall Street. And many of these Wall Street activities and Wall Street products literally fall through the cracks between banking and insurance and banking and consumer protection. So my idea is to consolidate those agencies, save the taxpayer money, and come up with a new Department of Federal Regulation that is actually more effective at regulating Wall Street the way it now exists, to make sure what happened on Wall Street never happens again. We talk about green jobs. Well, let's just do it. Let's go do it. Let's go to the private sector, offer a $100 million pot. Let's get the most creative ideas that actually create jobs, reduce pollution, and further environmental justice. And let's fund those jobs and come up with models that we can replicate. We believe in minority and women-owned business enterprises. Right now, the state has a goal of 10% to what they call MWBE enterprises. I want to double that goal to 20%. You guys in the front won't remember, but there was a situation in a facility called Willowbrook, which was a state mental hospital that a television journalist went into and photographed really terrible conditions that people were left in a mental hospital, and showed these pictures on TV, and the people were outraged, and it spurred a whole movement called deinstitutionalization to move people out of these large institutionalized settings into community group residences. There are echoes of that today in what we're doing in juvenile justice facilities. You have juvenile justice facilities that are basically incarcerating young people who, in the name of remediation and in the name of therapy, the truth is they are immensely expensive to operate. We're paying over $200,000 per juvenile, over $200,000 per juvenile, to leave them in facilities where more often than not the conditions are actually making them worse, not better. After a juvenile justice facility, the studies show 90% recidivism rate. 90% recidivism. So you're spending $200,000 to keep a young person in a juvenile justice facility that makes it more likely that they're going to return to the criminal justice system. Why? Because we need the state jobs, because we need the employment. I understand needing jobs. It is a desperate need for the state. That doesn't justify locking up young people at exorbitant rates to the taxpayer that are making their lives worse. Incarceration is not an employment program. You need jobs, create jobs. You don't keep a young person imprisoned in a facility to create a state job. That has to stop, and that will stop. I believe in marriage equality, and I want to pass it this year and have marriage equality in the state of New York for all New Yorkers. We need to produce markets for our agricultural community in New York, and we need to get good food and good products into inner city areas. I want to put the two together, where the state will actually produce green markets in urban areas all across the state, catering to New York agricultural products. So we'll create markets for the agricultural industry, and we'll get good food into the urban areas. And last but not least, all of this to seize the moment of opportunity. New York is not alone in this situation. This is a national economic problem. As a matter of fact, there are 8 states that are actually worse than New York in terms of fiscal condition. So all the states are going through this. They're all recalibrating their economics. But how you act at this time of transition is going to determine the future of this state. And there have been transitions before, agricultural transitions, industrial, high-tech. How these states handle themselves will determine their futures. This is an opportunity for the state of New York. We can excel in this transition. We have in the past transitions. That's what made us the leader in the first place. And we can do it again if we're smart and if we do what is, yes, hard in the short term, but will provide long-term gain. And that is exactly where we are as a state. And you know who's going to make the change? Well, your elected Governor Andrew, you make the change. I'm not going to make the change. Your new senator is not going to make the change. Your assemblywoman isn't going to make the change. You are going to make the change. Change comes when the people demand change. Because fundamentally, democracy works. And when people say, well, how did Albany get so bad and how did it stay so bad for so long? It was allowed to get that bad. And it was allowed to stay that bad for so long. Because the people allowed it. Democracy works when you act. You know when Albany changes? When you insist on Albany changing. That's when Albany changes. And I said in my campaign from day one, this is not about me, this is about we. I will do everything I can. I will work 7 days a week. But at the end of the day in Albany, I'm just another voice. My voice only resonates when I have you behind me. My voice only resonates when I echo you. I am your spokesperson. I have power with that legislature when they look at me and they see you behind me. That's when they respond. You're the big guy standing behind me. That's the power of the governor. And you want that legislature to change, you tell the legislature. Let me tell you something about politicians. I know them. I had some in my own family. Politicians listen very well. They hear very well. They have very acute hearing. Why? Because it's sort of natural selection. If politicians don't hear well, they don't stay politicians for long. They are automatically eliminated. They listen, and they listen to you. But you have to speak. You want Addie to vote a certain way? You tell her how you want her to vote, she will vote that way. You want the senator to vote a certain way, you tell the senator what you want, she will vote that way. They listen, but you have to speak. You have to speak. And that's the bottom line of this for me today, is to get you into this game and to get you into this dialogue. That's why I wanted to bring it to you. Here are the facts. This is your state. This is your life. This is about your family. This is about these high school students and whether they stay here or they get on a plane and they leave. I can only tell you the situation. I can only tell you the condition we're in. I can only propose a path to you. You're going to have to decide. You're going to have to make your voice heard if you think Albany is going to respond. I need a citizens campaign. I need you to weigh in. We set up a website. I need you to understand that website. Go on, sign up, get into the game because it's your game. We do what we need to do. We can take this moment. And yes, for all the pain and all the hardship. And doing what I put up here is going to be hard. You will be hearing in the next few weeks, Governor Cuomo wants to do this, Governor Cuomo wants to do that. To close a $10 billion gap, to get that spending back in line, we're going to have to spend less money. Everyone who I'm going to have to tell, spend less money, you know what they're going to say? No, we want to spend more money, just like we have been. And I'm going to be turning off the valve. And they're going to be complaining, and they're going to be yelling, and they're going to be going to the legislature. And they're going to be saying, tell the governor he's wrong. Reverse the governor. Increase the spending. We continue to increase the spending, this state's going to go off the cliff. It will go off the cliff. This is the time to pull back. This is the time to recalibrate. It is going to be hard short term. I need you to do it. But if we do what we need to do, I believe the future for this state is unlimited. I told you I was in the federal government. I worked in every state in the nation, literally. I've been there. I know what else is there. I've worked in over 600 cities, every state. Nobody has what we have. Nobody. Nobody has these assets. Nobody has the workforce. Nobody has the geography. Nobody has the diversity. Nobody has what we have in the state of New York. We just need a government that is as good as our people. And that's up to you. We do this, and we're going to make this a moment where the Empire State strikes back, and we make this state the greatest state in the nation once again. Not just what this state was, but we'll bring this state to a level that it's never been to before. And we'll make these high school students proud to be New Yorkers. And we'll bring this state to a level higher than we had. And that's our obligation as citizens, as parents, our obligation as colleagues. Let's make New York shine. Together we're going to do it. Thank you for having me, and God bless you.